Last year, Olivia Carter died, at least. That's what the doctors told her parents as she lay in a coma with tubes down her throat, her skull fractured, her ribs broken, and her brain swelling beyond the point of hope. Their reaction wasn't panic, or grief, or desperation. It was silence. Then came her mother's cold reply, "She's not really our daughter. We owe her nothing," and just like that, they turned around and walked away, leaving Olivia alone to die in the dark. But death didn't take her, not that night, not ever. What followed was far worse, awakening to a life she could no longer lie to herself about. A life built not on love but on performance. A family defined not by care but by appearances. This is not a story about dying, it's a story about waking up. And I need you to stay until the end because how it ends might just change how you see the word family forever. Before we go any further, take a moment and subscribe to the channel if you believe stories like this deserve to be told. Your support helps us continue to bring real, raw truths to light. Now back to Olivia. Olivia grew up in a quiet suburb outside of Boston, in a pristine white house with a navy blue door and flower beds that were always perfectly trimmed. To outsiders, the Carters were the picture of American perfection. A successful father in corporate law, a socialite mother who volunteered at every charity auction, and to lovely daughters Olivia and her younger sister Emily. The photos told a beautiful lie: birthday parties with color-coordinated themes, snow angels in matching scarves, Christmas mornings overflowing with gifts and laughter. But the truth was more brittle, more fragile, like a porcelain doll with a crack running down the spine, hidden until you turned it just so. Olivia's earliest memory of knowing something was off happened when she was 5. Emily had broken a vase in the living room while running through the house. When their mother came in, Olivia was already cleaning up the shards. "What happened here?" she asked. Olivia answered without thinking, "I did it." The words came out like a reflex, natural, automatic. Later that evening, Olivia overheard her mother on the phone. "She's so eager to please, not like Emily. Emily has spirit." That word spirit was repeated often over the years. Spirit was what they called it when Emily threw tantrums in the grocery store, when she shouted at teachers, when she refused to eat. Olivia, on the other hand, was called dutiful, responsible, smart, but never spirited. Spirit was celebrated, obedience was tolerated. At first, the difference felt small, little things. Emily got the larger bedroom. Emily picked the restaurant on family nights. Emily's drawings went up on the fridge while Olivia's ended up in folders in the kitchen drawer. Her father had an explanation: "Your sister needs more encouragement. You're already good at school." When Olivia brought home straight A's, the response was a nod. When Emily scraped together a B-, there was a trip to Baskin-Robbins. Olivia told herself it didn't matter, that she was being dramatic. That love looked different for everyone, but late at night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that she was playing a part in someone else's story and never the lead. Then came the night that shattered everything. She was 12, up past midnight, heading to the kitchen for water. Her parents didn't know she was awake. Their voices filtered through the hallway like smoke through a door crack. "You've always favored Emily," her mother snapped. "It's because she's ours," her father hissed back. "Unlike Olivia, she's not yours either," her mother shot back. Olivia stood frozen in the hallway, her heart thudded in her ears. The glass fell from her hand and shattered on the floor. The next morning, no one said a word about what she might have heard. Over scrambled eggs and toast, the silence was deafening. Finally, Olivia said quietly, "I know I'm adopted." Her father lowered the newspaper just slightly. Her mother smiled tightly, pouring coffee. "Don't be ridiculous, Olivia, you must have had a bad dream." And that was it. No confirmation, no denial. Just that eerie, manufactured calm her parents wore like a second skin. That moment taught Olivia her first real lesson in the Carter household. Truth was dangerous. Silence was survival. She buried herself in achievement. If she couldn't be wanted for who she was, maybe she could be needed for what she did. Straight A's, honor society, science fairs, piano recitals. She didn't just succeed, she excelled, but excellence wasn't love. It was a currency she traded for inclusion, and it never bought quite enough. At school, Olivia wore confidence like armor. At home, she was invisible unless she was impressive. Even then, her victories were shared with thin smiles and careful nods, never hugs, never real praise. Her mother called her low maintenance, which, in the Carter house, was the same as saying unremarkable. Meanwhile, Emily grew wild and free, held up as bold, independent, opinionated, the golden child who needed extra care. Extra support, extra everything. And Olivia quiet, controlled. Olivia carried the weight of knowing she didn't belong. Not really, she wasn't their real daughter. And somewhere, beneath the honor cords and framed certificates, she started to believe she never would be. But the worst part, she kept loving them anyway. Even after that night, even after that truth. That's the part no one talks about, how adopted children can know deep in their bones that they're not fully accepted and still crave the acceptance of those who withhold it. The need doesn't fade with the facts, it only sharpens. You see, it wasn't the lie that broke Olivia. It was how well she fit inside it. That was childhood in the Carter household. A theatre of performance, a masquerade of perfection. And at the center of it all stood a girl who just wanted to be seen. Not for her grades, not for her accomplishments. Just seen, and loved, and claimed as hers. But in this family, nothing was unconditional. Not even love, and the price for pretending. One day, it would nearly cost her life. Now, let me ask you something. If you discovered you were adopted, but your parents had spent your whole life denying it and treating you as second class, what would you do? A stay silent and try to earn their love, B walk away and protect your peace. Let us know in the comments, are you more like A or B? There's no wrong answer, but your reflection might just start a bigger healing journey than you ever imagined. Perfection is a prison that doesn't look like one at first. It's clean, it's polished, it earns applause. People admire the bars, not realizing they are bars at all. For Olivia Carter, perfection was the only path she had left. Not to be loved, because she already understood that wasn't on offer, but to be needed, respected, tolerated. And so, she built herself like a machine, flawless, tireless, always moving, never breaking. By the time she entered high school, Olivia had mastered the art of invisibly carrying pain. She had a smile for every teacher, a nod for every award, and a schedule packed so tightly it left no room to feel. She graduated at the top of her class without ever celebrating herself, no party, no balloons. Just a quiet dinner with her parents where they spoke more about Emily's college applications than Olivia's full-ride scholarship to MIT. That was the pattern. Olivia's accomplishments were expected to be exciting. Her excellence was a given, her hard work invisible. At home, she was a shadow gliding between her parents' needs and her sister's demands, careful never to ask for too much, or anything at all. But inside, something deeper had begun to harden. It wasn't resentment, not yet, it was resignation. The quiet heartbreak of someone who had stopped hoping for softness and settled instead for survival. At MIT, Olivia found her breath again. For the first time, no one compared her to a sister. No one reminded her she was adopted with subtle glances or sharp omissions. She was just herself, brilliant, driven, curious. She majored in biomedical engineering with a minor in artificial intelligence. While others partied, she worked in labs late into the night. While her peers stumbled through identity and heartbreak, Olivia buried herself in creation. If she couldn't be loved, she'd be irreplaceable. At 22, she co-founded a startup focused on AI-assisted diagnostic tools. The company gained traction quickly, thanks to her genius and relentless discipline. Investors called her a visionary. Her name started appearing in trade magazines. Her professors wrote her letters like they were composing for royalty. But at home, her parents still called to ask if she'd be home for Thanksgiving. They didn't ask about her work unless someone else brought it up first. Her mother once introduced her at a charity function as our practical daughter and added, "She's very smart with computers, I think." There's a particular ache in being recognized by the world but overlooked by the people who raised you. It's like standing under a spotlight and still shivering with cold. That ache came to a head during one Thanksgiving dinner, 3 years before the accident that would nearly end her life. Olivia had just secured $40 million in series of funding for her company, an extraordinary milestone. Her grandmother Evelyn, proud as ever, had raised a toast in her honor. "I always knew Olivia would change the world," she said, voice trembling with age but clear in conviction. Her mother smiled, that thin, sugar-coated smile Olivia knew too well. "Yes, well, she's always been determined to prove herself." Olivia put her fork down slowly. "Prove myself," her father sipped his wine. "Isn't that what most adopted children do? Overachieve, compensate." The words were so casual, so clinical. Not an accusation, not even cruelty, just truth, stripped of tenderness. Across the table, Emily looked stunned. "Dad, what are you saying?" "She knows," her mother waved off. "She's known since she was 12. I don't see why we need to act like it's a secret." "You denied it," Olivia said, her voice tighter than she expected. "You called me delusional when I asked." "We thought it was better that way," her father said, as if explaining to a client. "Children need stability. I needed truth," Olivia replied. Her mother's smile vanished. "We gave you everything. A home, an education, every opportunity. Most adopted children would be grateful." That word grateful landed like a slap. It always had. Across from her, Grandma Evelyn slammed her hand on the table. "That's enough, Margaret." But it wasn't, not yet. 20 years of quiet alienation erupted in that moment. Olivia stood, her napkin falling to the floor. "You never wanted me. You wanted the idea of me. The perfect daughter you could parade at events. The one who wouldn't embarrass you. The one who would validate your parenting without ever asking you to actually be parents." No one moved. Emily stared at her, wide-eyed. Her parents blinked, as if surprised she had found a voice they couldn't mute. "I'm done trying to earn what should have been given freely," Olivia said. "I'm done performing." She walked out that night. No one followed her. She changed her number. Moved to a new apartment. The only person she kept in her life was her grandmother, who never asked Olivia to perform, only to visit. They had weekly Sunday brunch eggs, stories, and shared silence. Evelyn was her only living proof that love could exist without condition. Years passed. Olivia grew stronger in solitude. Her company expanded. Her reputation solidified. But a part of her remained fractured, held together by routine and distance. She had built perfection so skillfully, so completely, that even she sometimes forgot it had come from pain. Until the night of the accident, until the moment perfection couldn't protect her. That's the thing about building yourself to be untouchable. You eventually forget how to be held. You forget how to ask for help. You mistake applause for affection and strategy for safety. But no performance can survive a collision with death. And Olivia Carter's curtain was about to fall. Not on her life, but on the role she had played so well. The perfect daughter, the perfect achiever, the perfect lie. It was a Tuesday night in late October, the kind where Boston's drizzle felt like it had no end. The kind of evening that blurred the city in soft grey, made headlights look like ghosts drifting through the mist. Olivia Carter was still at the office, immersed in lines of code, the glow of her monitor casting shadows under her eyes. She'd been working on an update to their diagnostic software, something that couldn't wait. Not in her mind. Nothing ever could. Her business partner, Samantha, had poked her head in around 8 p.m. "You should go home. It'll be here tomorrow." But Olivia, being Olivia, shook her head with a tired smile. 15 more minutes. It was closer to 10:30 when she finally shut her laptop and stepped into the rain. Her apartment was only 15 minutes away, and she didn't feel like waiting for a car service. That decision, that small choice to drive herself home through the familiar back roads of Cambridge, changed everything. They said the driver who hit her was drunk, unfamiliar with the area, and speeding. At the intersection of Linden and 3rd, a blind spot Olivia always slowed for, he didn't stop. His headlights appeared in a blinding flash. The crash was thunder, metal against metal, glass shattering into the silence of the night. Her car flipped twice before it hit a lamp post and came to a full stop. Inside, Olivia was barely breathing. She arrived at Massachusetts General Hospital unconscious, blood soaking through her white blouse, face swollen, bones cracked in multiple places. The scans showed severe head trauma, fractured ribs, a broken collarbone, and a dangerously high intracranial pressure. They induced a coma to reduce the swelling, to give her brain a chance to survive. She wasn't supposed to make it through the night. At 3:12 a.m., the hospital called her emergency contacts her parents. They came, but not as parents, not really. They were shown into the ICU conference room where Dr. Chin, the lead neurologist, explained the situation. "Your daughter sustained massive trauma," she said gently. "We've stabilized her for now, but the next 24 hours are critical. She requires surgery to repair an orbital fracture and reduce cranial pressure." There was a pause, then her mother's voice clipped, businesslike. "She's not our biological daughter," the doctor frowned. "She has you listed as her emergency contacts." "She was adopted," her father added informally. "The paperwork was never filed properly." The air turned colder. "We're not in a position to authorize anything," her mother said. "You'll need to find someone else, a state fund, or whatever it is you do for indigent patients." Dr. Chin took a long breath. "Without family consent, we are limited in what we can do outside of emergency provisions." "Then do the bare minimum," her father replied. "We're not responsible." They left, just like that. You'd think, after a lifetime of feeling unloved, a moment like that wouldn't sting so badly. But abandonment doesn't feel less cruel just because it's expected. In fact, it hurts more because you keep hoping somewhere, even quietly, that when things get truly dire, love will kick in. That biology will fall away, and humanity will rise. It didn't. Olivia was left in a medically induced coma, unaware of the decisions being made, or more dangerously, not made on her behalf. She couldn't speak, she couldn't move, but she could hear. Somewhere in that murky in-between space where the body sleeps but the mind watches, she registered voices, movements, machines beeping. She heard the doctor's footsteps, she heard the silence where her parents should have been. She heard Nurse Emily Davis say, "I'm not leaving her alone." Not after what they did. Emily was the light in Olivia's darkness. She cleaned her wounds, played music from her phone, told her about the weather, the hospital gossip, her favorite Taylor Swift songs. "They say coma patients can hear us," she whispered once, "so I'm going to keep talking." 3 days after the accident, it was Samantha who showed up, frazzled, heartbroken, and furious. When the hospital finally reached her, she dropped everything and flew in. She signed every form. She met with every doctor. She called a lawyer. She sat at Olivia's bedside every day, updating her on the company, holding her hand through silence. "They'd tried to take everything," Emily told Olivia one morning. "Not just your care, they went to your grandmother's lawyer. They're contesting the will, saying you're incompetent, that you'll never recover." Samantha had brought her own legal team. She was fighting Olivia's parents from every angle: guardianship, estate control, public narrative. She refused to let them define Olivia's story or claim her absence as permission. On the 5th day, Olivia was wheeled into surgery. The lights were blinding. She remembers that part floating upward into whiteness, then nothing. She awoke in recovery with her head pounding and her throat raw. Emily leaned in with tears in her eyes. "You did it. The surgery was a success. Dr. Chin says you're going to be okay." But she wasn't okay, not in any way that mattered. The betrayal ran deeper than physical pain. It was a wound in her core, one that rewrote everything she thought she had accepted. Her parents hadn't just failed her emotionally. They had failed her medically, legally, mortally. They had walked out of a hospital room and left their daughter to die because she didn't share their blood. That's not neglect. That's annihilation. Recovery was brutal. Sitting up made her vomit. Breathing without assistance was agony. But Olivia pushed herself, driven not just by will but by fury. Spite, she joked once to Samantha, is the most effective painkiller. It was during her 2nd week in recovery that she learned her grandmother, Evelyn, had passed away. Olivia had been traveling during the funeral. Her parents never told her. She found out through a letter from Evelyn's attorney, James Wright. Evelyn had left Olivia everything: the house, the estate, the truth. James brought the documents: Olivia's birth certificate, the adoption paperwork, and a letter written by Evelyn before she died. It explained everything: how Olivia's biological mother had been Evelyn's niece, how she had begged Evelyn to place her with someone who could give her a better life, and how Evelyn, believing her own son Richard and his wife Margaret would offer that love, had unknowingly handed Olivia to people who would never see her as their own. That night, alone in her hospital bed, Olivia read the letter over and over. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't imagining the distance, the dismissiveness, the conditional love. It had all been real, and now she had proof. But more than that, she had purpose. They left her for dead, she survived. They tried to steal her voice, she found it. And in the quiet fury of healing bones and broken trust, she made a decision not just to recover but to rise. They didn't know it yet, but Olivia Carter had just begun her greatest work, rewriting the story they tried to bury her in. Not as a victim, not as a daughter, but as the author. They say the truth will set you free, but they never tell you how much it will cost. For Olivia Carter, truth wasn't just something she uncovered, it was something she bled for, crawled toward, and held tightly even when it burned. By the time she returned home from the hospital, her body was still broken in places. 2 ribs still sore, her shoulder stiff from the surgery. Her face bore the fading bruises that made strangers stare. But none of those wounds compared to the one left by her parents' voices in that ICU room, saying she wasn't really their daughter, that she was not their responsibility, that memory lived under her skin, breathing with every heartbeat. She moved into her late grandmother Evelyn's Victorian home in Cambridge, the only place that had ever truly felt safe. The air still smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. The wide oak floors creaked in familiar ways, and sunlight filtered through stained glass windows just as it had when Olivia was a child, sitting at the kitchen table, learning the difference between love that is spoken and love that is shown. Evelyn had always shown it, but now Evelyn was gone. And Olivia's parents had already made their move. 3 days after she awoke from the coma, her attorney, James Wright, had walked into her hospital room with a thick envelope and a grave expression. "They're contesting the will," he'd said gently. "They filed a petition claiming you're mentally incompetent to manage the estate. They want to be appointed as your legal guardians." Olivia had laughed in a hollow, stunned sound. "They tried to kill me with silence, and now they want to save me with paperwork." James nodded. "It's cruel and calculated. The moment you were unconscious, they made their move." Now, weeks later, with her body slowly mending, Olivia sat at the dining room table her grandmother had once polished every Sunday and planned her counterattack not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Her parents hadn't just abandoned her emotionally. They had used her silence, her stillness, her coma, as an opportunity to erase her. But not this time. She began by requesting the hospital's security footage. The camera in her ICU room had captured everything. The way her father leaned forward and asked about the cost of her surgery, the moment her mother declared, "She's not our real daughter," and the way they turned their backs when Dr. Chin explained that Olivia might not make it without immediate intervention. James submitted the request through legal channels, and when the footage arrived, they watched it together. Neither of them spoke during the recording. There was nothing to say. "This," Olivia said when it ended, "is who they are when no one's watching." She hired a private security firm to change the locks on her grandmother's house and install motion-sensitive cameras throughout the property. Her parents still had keys. They'd tried to visit once, but the new system denied them access. Every room was now monitored, and the footage backed up to a secure cloud server. Olivia wasn't going to be blindsided again. Then came the hardest part, the letter. Some versions read like courtroom indictments, others like confessions from a child still desperate for love. None of them felt right. It wasn't until a therapy session with Dr. Morris that the breakthrough came. "What do you want from them?" the therapist asked. Olivia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I want them to say they were wrong. I want them to mean it. And if they never do," the question stung. But it was the right one. "I want to be free of needing them too," she answered. That night, she wrote the final version of the letter, not from anger, but from clarity. It wasn't a plea, it wasn't a performance. It was a declaration. She addressed them by their first names, Richard and Margaret, not out of disrespect, but because Mom and Dad no longer applied. She laid out everything: the decades of conditional love, the denial of her adoption, the gaslighting, the erasure. She included printed stills from the hospital footage and copies of the adoption papers her parents had once claimed were never formal. She reminded them that her grandmother had left her the estate not as an act of pity, but because Olivia was her blood. Her family, the only one who had truly seen her. And then, at the end, she offered them something they hadn't earned. Forgiveness, not for their sake, for her own. Because holding on to rage only made her bleed longer. Because every moment she spent chasing their approval was a moment stolen from the life she was finally building on her own terms. "I no longer need your acknowledgement, your affection, or your love," she wrote. "I am whole without you." James placed the letter on the dining table inside the house, knowing her parents had filed paperwork to visit and collect sentimental heirlooms. The date was set, the stage prepared. On Saturday afternoon at 2:03 p.m., the Carters arrived in a black Mercedes. Through the security cameras, Olivia and Samantha watched them struggle with the lock, then call a locksmith. They entered the house and began wandering through the rooms as if nothing had happened, picking up vases, opening drawers, commenting on furniture. When they reached the dining room, they saw the envelope. Her mother opened it first, her face blanched with each paragraph. Her father took the pages, growing redder as he read. Emily, her sister, was with them. She watched, confused at first, then horrified. "What is this?" Emily asked. "You left her to die." Her parents tried to explain. That it was complicated, that they were overwhelmed, that they were in shock, but Olivia's words, and the footage linked in the letter, made those lies impossible to maintain. Emily read everything, then, without another word, she took the documents and walked out of the house. Afterward, Olivia sat in silence for a long time. Samantha said nothing, just placed a hand on her shoulder. "They're going to try to spin this," Samantha said. "They'll say the footage was taken out of context." "They always spin it," Olivia replied, "but this time, I'm not in the shadows." That was what truth had given her, not revenge, not triumph, but power. Power to name what had been done, power to stop asking to be loved, power to build something real, even from the ruins. Her parents would keep fighting. They'd make calls. They'd stir up sympathy from old friends who didn't know the full story, but Olivia had the truth. She had it in writing, she had it on tape. And this time, she had herself. Grief has a strange way of shaping you, not the loud, sobbing kind that comes with funerals and eulogies. No, it's the quiet kind that lingers in the spaces no one sees. The way you look at your phone out of habit, expecting a call that will never come. The way you prepare 2 cups of coffee, forgetting that the person you made the second one for is no longer in your life. That's the grief Olivia Carter lived with, not for a person, but for a version of family that never truly existed. The grief of finally giving up the fantasy of being loved by people who were never capable of it. After the letter was delivered, after the footage had been seen, and after the court denied her parents' guardianship claim, Olivia returned to the home her grandmother had left her. It stood like a quiet monument to everything she had endured and survived. With the help of Samantha and James, she had reclaimed it legally. Now she had to reclaim it emotionally. She began with the small things, opening windows to let in the fall air, dusting bookshelves filled with her grandmother's mysteries and memoirs, placing fresh flowers on the kitchen table where Sunday brunch once took place. But there were reminders everywhere: her grandmother's teacup on the windowsill, the indentation in the old armchair by the fireplace, the scent of lavender and old wood. It was not just a house, it was a memory suspended in time. And yet, it was hers now, hers to rebuild, hers to redefine. Olivia knew the legal battles weren't over. Her parents, Richard and Margaret, had filed an appeal, this time claiming that the adoption had been coerced, that they had never truly consented. It was absurd on paper, but dangerous in the court of public opinion. She knew what they were trying to do. They didn't care about winning custody or recovering the estate. They wanted to stain her story. They wanted to fracture her truth. It wasn't about her, it was about power. But Olivia didn't flinch. She had already faced death. She had already heard them disown her while she lay unconscious in a hospital bed. There was nothing more they could do to her that she hadn't already survived. What surprised her, though, was the message from Emily. Her younger sister had been quiet since the day she walked out of the house, letter and documents in hand. Now, weeks later, she texted, "We need to talk." They met at a small cafe near Cambridge Street neutral ground. Olivia arrived with her cane, moving slower than before but still standing. Emily was already seated, 2 cups of coffee on the table, both black with 1 sugar. She remembered, the conversation was awkward at first. Apologies came in stuttered fragments. Olivia wasn't looking for an apology. She was looking for honesty, for acknowledgement. And to Emily's credit, she offered it. "I didn't know," Emily whispered. "I didn't see it. Or maybe I did and just didn't understand what I was seeing." Olivia nodded. "I don't blame you, you were a child too." They talked for over an hour about their childhood, their parents' manipulations, the roles they had both been assigned in a family script written long before either of them knew how to read it. Emily asked if Olivia would ever forgive their parents. Olivia answered truthfully, "I don't know," she said. "But I'm done needing to." It was Emily who asked, almost shyly, if she could stay at the house for a while. She had moved out of their parents' home, feeling suffocated by the lies and the silence. She had nowhere to go. Olivia hesitated. It was one thing to reconnect, another to live together again. But then she remembered her grandmother's words, that love sometimes comes not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices, so she said yes. They set boundaries, separate spaces, ground rules. They were no longer children sharing a hallway and silent dinners. They were women trying to learn how to coexist without the shadow of parental judgment hanging over them. Surprisingly, it worked. Emily brought dinner when Olivia worked late. Olivia helped Emily study for her board exams. They discovered shared tastes in trashy reality shows and old jazz records. Slowly, the tension dissolved, replaced by a quiet, tentative affection. Not a sisterhood restored but one reimagined, one chosen. Samantha visited often. Nurse Emily, now working for a private home health agency, dropped by on weekends. James came by for brunch on Sundays, bringing fresh pastries and updates on the legal proceedings. It wasn't a family by blood, it wasn't defined by law. But it was a family nonetheless, and Olivia, for the first time, felt safe in it. She poured herself into her work again, but this time with a different purpose. The accident had left her with a new obsession: what happens to people who are conscious but can't speak. People like she had been, trapped in their own bodies, listening to their fate being decided by others. She launched a new product through her company, Bridgeep, a system that used eye movement and neurological signals to allow comatose patients to communicate. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. It was hope. It was meaning forged from pain. On the 1-year anniversary of the accident, Olivia hosted a dinner at the house. Samantha brought her new boyfriend. Nurse Emily arrived with her wife. James came with a bottle of aged wine. Emily invited a neurosurgeon she'd been seeing, kind, quiet, and clearly smitten. Olivia sat at the head of the table and looked around at these people who had shown up when it mattered. "I'd like to make a toast," she said, raising her glass. "To the family we build, to the ones who stay. To the ones who don't ask us to prove our worth, but see it already." The glasses clinked. There were smiles. And in the warm glow of laughter and candlelight, something inside Olivia settled. The final blow came a month later. Her parents, desperate to reclaim their narrative, filed a civil lawsuit claiming emotional distress. They alleged that Olivia's letter and the released hospital footage had caused them psychological harm. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice. In the ruling, he wrote, "Truth is not defamation. Documentation is not cruelty. A child speaking the reality of their experience cannot be held accountable for the consequences of others' choices." The story made local headlines. Olivia's parents, once revered figures in their social circles, quietly sold their home and moved to Florida. They didn't say goodbye. She didn't expect them to. Emily asked if she was okay. Olivia thought for a moment. "Yes," she said. "Because they've been gone a long time. Now it's just official." She turned her attention toward the future, toward healing, toward the family that had gathered not out of obligation, but out of love. She stopped needing to be chosen, because she had finally chosen herself. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some stories don't wrap themselves neatly with apologies, tears, and a family reunion around the dinner table. Some stories end with strength, with truth, and with peace earned through struggle, not forgiveness granted to the undeserving. Olivia Carter's story is one of those. She didn't win her parents back. She didn't convince them to see her worth. She didn't change their hearts. But she changed her own life, and sometimes that's more powerful than anything else. There's something deeply human about the desire to be loved by those who raised us. It's not just about affection, it's about identity. We grow up believing that our worth is reflected in our parents' eyes. That if they love us, we must be lovable. That if they withhold love, something must be wrong with us. Olivia lived that belief for nearly 3 decades silently, dutifully, excelling in every way possible to earn the acceptance that should have been given freely. Her story reminds us how dangerous that belief can be. She was never the problem. Her only mistake was trying too hard to become the solution for people who were never willing to change. The truth is, some people will never be able to love you the way you need. Not because you're unworthy, but because their love has limits, boundaries built from their own pain, fear, or selfishness. And you can spend your whole life trying to shrink yourself to fit inside those boundaries, or you can walk away and build your own space where love is abundant, unconditional, and real. That's what Olivia did. She stopped trying to earn what should have been given without question. She stopped negotiating her worth with people who only saw her value when it benefited them. She stopped hoping they would wake up and realize what they had lost. And instead, she built a new life with people who chose her, people who stayed, who showed up, who didn't need her to prove anything. And that's what I want you to take away from her story. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to be useful to be kept. You don't need to beg for basic care or understanding. The love that requires you to earn it is not love, it's performance. Let go of the applause, let go of the illusion that if you just try harder, they'll finally see you. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to convince someone to love you and start learning how to love yourself in their absence. So what is the lesson? The deepest healing doesn't come from getting an apology. It comes from releasing the need for one. It comes from recognizing that your story doesn't have to be rewritten by someone else. You are the author now, and how can you apply this in your own life? Maybe there's someone in your past or even in your present whose love feels conditional. Maybe you've been working overtime in your heart just to earn their approval. I want you to ask yourself this: is that love building you or breaking you? If it's the latter, it might be time to stop asking what else you can give and start asking what you truly deserve. You can choose your people, you can choose your truth. And most importantly, you can choose peace over permission. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because they couldn't love you back the right way? Yes. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done? No, but I know I probably should. Please share your answer in the comments below. Your story may help someone else find the courage they need. If this video touched something in you, I hope you'll take a moment to subscribe to the channel. And if you feel moved to support this work, even a small donation can go a long way. I'm not a young man anymore, but I still believe in using my time, voice, and experience to bring healing stories to the world. Your support, whether by subscribing, sharing, or donating, gives me the strength to keep going and to keep giving. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling. Thank you for being here.